Vikings Night Practice is officially in the books. Ben, you had the best seat in the house. You're still there. The fireworks are still going off as we speak. Uh, give me. Everybody wants to hear about the quarterbacks. I think people were looking for something to take away from this one. What do you see from the guys who were throwing the football?
I just want everybody to know that I'm going to do my best to speak loudly over this fireworks show that I think is going to last probably 30 minutes. It's going to be a part of our whole little broadcast here. But yeah, everybody was curious about the quarterback situation. Here's how I kind of viewed it. JJ, to me, he looked decisive. He looked sharp. He had a bunch of great tight window throws and 7-on-7 and a couple early team periods. He just looked crisp. And then it sort of waned in the back half of the practice, and then he picked it up a little bit in the 2-minute drill as well. He had a couple nice throws at Ty Felton to really open things up. He got the offense down to about the 15-yard line, and then it really just kind of sputtered from there. I really liked the way that he was just firing the ball into tight windows. He just played with a calculated risk, which I thought was kind of impressive to see. What I didn't like about Kyler early on was kind of the opposite, and it really was a theme throughout the whole practice. I thought he looked indecisive. He had an interception in 7-on-7. He had another interception in the same team period that I was talking about, McCarthy playing well. That one was to Isaiah Rodgers. And that one was actually a terrible interception. And I'll get into that here in a little bit. But he did get better as the practice went on. He had a great touchdown strike to Jordan Addison, backside of a 3-by-1. It was a nice little slant pass in the back of the end zone, and it was a bullet pass wide open to Addison. And then later on, he felt the pressure. He scrambled in and ran a touchdown in as well. So he looked a little bit better towards the end of practice. 2-minute drill, pretty shaky. Not all his fault. It was a bad snap on one of them, but just didn't look like he had all of his footing. The thing I didn't love about Kyler, and you saw it a little bit in 2-minute drill. You saw it in the early part of practice. To me, he still looks like he's not progressively or proactively going through the offense and the reads. Everything that he's doing looks reactive. Like, there's the guy open now. Now I'm athletic and quick enough to throw the ball, but he's not anticipating that guy to be open. A couple times later in the practice, he did anticipate a little bit better, but things just still look mechanically clunky to me with him. But he still made a couple of big plays.
Well, let's stay with offense. I want to get to the defense, but let's stay with offense for 1 second before we move on, because everybody's been talking about Ty Felton as the wide receiver that's breaking out. But you were texting me all night about a different wide receiver.
Dude, Miles Price killed it today. We all know that he's a great returner. He was making plays all over the place. He had a great sideline catch from McCarthy on 7-on-7. He shined again in the team period, another reception from J.J. McCarthy. And then I was actually on the field. This was actually before the practice. So this had nothing to do with what we saw when practice happened. We were just talking about different guys, and the gentleman I was talking to, he's like, man, Miles Price has been basically unguardable in a lot of the 7-on-7 and the passing situations. Like, his ability to separate and get open in a short area has really, really shined and impressed a lot of people so far in training camp. So we're not hearing a lot about it, but it sounds like internally they're really impressed what he's been able to do, not just as a returner, but now as a wide receiver.
It sounds like part of the reason maybe the quarterback struggled at times, and I'm not trying to take responsibility off him, but every text I got from everybody there was like, the defense is bringing it on every down. It sounds like B-Flow made it significantly difficult for these guys.
Yeah, I don't envy any quarterback that was in there because it was just an onslaught of pressure. Anytime that they thought it was going to be any sort of pass, like it didn't have to be just the 2-minute period, any sort of passing down, They were bringing the heat, and they could not be stopped. Blake Cashman, I think, probably had 3 sacks tonight. Jalen Redmond picking up right where he left off from last year. He's constantly in the backfield. Our guy Chuck Demings had a great sack on a late cornerback blitz. They were bringing pressure from everywhere. The defensive line, I think, is really, really strong. Really impressed by everybody they put up there. They're winning one-on-ones. It doesn't have to be a blitz for those guys to be effective and to create some chaos. Like I said, the linebackers are bringing the heat. And then, wouldn't you know it, you get a short field on the right hash, and all of a sudden you get Chuck D blitzing off the edge, completely unblocked. Nobody saw him. So you got to pay attention to every single angle on this defense.
With all the negativity about the last handful of drafts, and I'm not reducing any of that, but it is starting to feel like maybe the last couple years we have accumulated some pieces along that defensive line that may allow us to have a little more depth, which is something I was really worried about. Let's shift to the other thing that I think everybody was thinking about going into this practice. This is kind of the first real look at this new run scheme. Could you tell anything? I mean, obviously they're not really going to show it off this far from the regular season, but did you, as a guy who watches tape, notice anything different or significant?
It is hard to tell because they were going to show a ton, and we probably won't see a ton of it on Saturday as well, but you're going to see the foundations of what the run game looks like. I mean, clearly they're running the football a lot more out of shotgun. I think that has a lot to do with Kyler Murray. And I think that's honestly, going back to college, I mean, I think J.J. McCarthy felt pretty comfortable in a shotgun situation. I think Aaron Jones, he keeps talking about he can play like 8 more seasons. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but that he's just like kind of playfully saying that's how good he feels. He had a couple of nice big runs. It just seems like when they can get to the line of scrimmage and there's just a little bit of daylight, the way that they're able to thin out the defense because they can stretch everything a little bit more. If these guys can see it and hit it, man, they get to the second level and the third level of that defense very, very quick. So we saw a little bit of it tonight, not a ton. I like what I see when it pops. The other guy I want to talk about too, since we're talking about the run game, is our guy Max Bredesen.
Okay.
He looks like the real deal old school football player. He had a nice lead block in the red zone for a Damon Claiborne touchdown. And it's funny because you watch some of these unsung heroes, and he had the key block. He had the right leverage. He popped the linebacker. And nobody else really gave him a lot of love. But when he was jogging off the field, he was kind of doing one of these things where he's like, rolling his arm, and then the running backs coach, they're all like dapping him up and stuff because they all know the most important piece of that play was him lead blocking. So it was just fun to see him like embrace the fact that he's going to be the key guy in a lot of these big runs, and nobody's going to notice, but the most important people in that locker room are going to notice.
Last thing I will add to the running game is on the last episode we did, one of my surprises of camp was the lack of Damon Claiborne hype. Not tonight. I got texts from everywhere. That thing you were saying, he finally put his foot in the ground and everybody went, whoa. I heard tonight everybody saw the speed.
So his speed is for real. They were doing a kickoff return drill at the start of practice, and he was getting his reps back there. There's speed, and then there's a different type of, there's like world-class speed. And I feel like he's got that world-class speed. It's effortless. There's a sudden burst of speed whenever he wants to take off. And I think with this new kickoff system that we have, and we heard all these people talk about running backs are kind of the best return men for this new NFL kickoff. I think that he's going to be the guy back there. And if he shows what he showed tonight and his ability to get up to top speed in an instant, I mean, we should have a couple of really explosive returns this season.
I'm going to give you a name. It's going to be the last thing that's said on the show, but I'm going to give you a name. The moment we drafted him was the guy I was thinking about, the guy I'm still thinking about, a guy that you and I have both thought about a lot over the years. You know who I'm talking about? Darren
Who?
Sproles.
You think
Just
that?
I'm telling you, everybody. I've already sunk myself too deep into this Claiborne hole, so I might as well dig a little deeper. Just like put that somewhere. Put that somewhere in the back of your mind. Put Darren Sproles.
You know, I don't see it like that, but you know who he reminds me of is a thicker Jamal Charles.
Oh,
I mean, you want to talk about a guy that can slash and he has speed. Um, I think Damon is a little bit more thick in his lower body than maybe Jamal was, but there's flashes more of that than I see of my K State guy Darren Sproles.
taller Darren Sproles. We gotta go. Thank you. Thank you for the insight.